This video is in the form of an audiobook. It's a short story about a man in his mid-30s called Chris. He is intelligent but feels stuck in life. Chris wasn't lazy. He just looked lazy. Day after day, he sat at his desk, half-motivated, scrolling through productivity hacks and YouTube videos like this one, hoping the next tip would flip the switch. But nothing ever stuck. If you've ever felt like you're meant for more, but still can't move, this story is yours. Because laziness isn't your problem. What's stopping you is something far deeper. Let's begin. See you in the next chapter. Chris was 36. On paper, he was fine. He had a decent job, a quiet apartment, a bookshelf full of unread self-help books, and 1,000 dreams he never acted on. Every morning, he'd wake up with ambition. Today will be different, he'd tell himself. He'd write a to-do list. Plan out his time. Imagine the version of himself that finally did the thing. But by afternoon, it would unravel. His mind would fog. He'd start feeling tired, not the kind of tired sleep could fix, but the heavy kind. Like his brain was full of static. And slowly, a quiet guilt would creep in. He wasn't doing enough. He should be further by now. But what Chris didn't realize was this. He wasn't lazy. He was carrying too much psychological weight. From childhood expectations to past failures, to fears about not being good enough, it all sat on his shoulders. And no one sees the invisible weight. They just see the slump, the stillness, the failure to act. But in truth, Chris wasn't still. He was fighting battles no one else could see. Every single day. One night, Chris was scrolling Reddit and found a post titled, "You don't need more motivation. You need a new identity." That line hit him like a slap, because it made him realize something. He saw himself as a procrastinator, a dreamer, someone who always started strong and fizzled out. And the human brain is weird. It fights to protect the identity it believes is true. So if deep down you see yourself as lazy, your brain will create behaviors to match that story. That's what happened to Chris. He'd get an idea, maybe launch a side hustle, go back to school, write a blog. But a voice would whisper, "Come on, you never finish anything." And so he didn't. The secret high performers know. They act like the person they want to become, before they feel like that person. Chris didn't need another to-do list. He needed a new internal narrative. After a month of journaling, something surfaced. Chris wasn't afraid of failure. He was afraid of success. It sounded strange even to him. But when he thought about it, it made sense. Success meant responsibility, visibility, expectation. And deep down, Chris had a fear he didn't want to face. What if I succeed, and it's still not enough? What if I get there, and I'm still me? So his brain protected him by keeping him stuck. Not out of laziness, out of fear. This fear lives in many ambitious people. They delay action not because they're unmotivated, but because their brain associates growth with danger. High performers learn to make peace with discomfort. To realize fear is not a stop sign, it's a sign of something worth moving toward. Chris wasn't broken. He was just scared. And for the first time, he admitted it. Chris used to wait for motivation to strike, like lightning. He believed that once he felt ready, he'd finally act. But readiness never came. He'd watch YouTube videos, read productivity threads, write goal lists, and still, nothing. Then he heard a quote that shifted everything. Action breeds motivation, not the other way around. Chris realized he'd been doing it backwards. High performers don't rely on motivation, they rely on momentum. They start small. They build frictionless routines. They act before they feel inspired. So, Chris tried an experiment. He committed to 10 minutes of focused action every morning, just 10 minutes. He didn't try to do everything. He just picked one thing that would move him 1% forward. Write a paragraph, send an email, sketch a business idea, and something magical happened. The more he acted, the more motivated he felt. Not the other way around. Chris began building evidence that he was capable, that he could trust himself. It wasn't easy. It wasn't dramatic. But for the first time in years, he was moving forward. Chris used to hate the word discipline. To him, it meant rules, restriction, pressure. But high performers know. Real discipline is actually freedom. Chris began to see this when he built a simple routine. He stopped overcomplicating things. No perfect planners. Number 4 a.m. wake-ups. Just a basic system. Wake up at the same time. Write down his 3 priorities. Do 1 deep focus task. Take 1 uncomfortable action. And here's what shocked him. The more he stuck to it, the lighter he felt. Less decision fatigue. Less guilt. Less chaos. Discipline gave Chris something he'd been missing for years: clarity. He didn't have to feel like it anymore. He just followed the path. There were days he slipped, of course. But the difference now? He didn't spiral into self-hate. He just got back on track. Discipline wasn't a prison. It was the ladder out of the pit. 6 months later, Chris barely recognized himself. Not because he had achieved massive external success, but because of how he felt. He didn't feel stuck, or guilty, or like a fraud waiting to be found out. He felt grounded. He wasn't chasing 100 ideas. He was focused. He wasn't scrolling for hacks. He was building habits. And slowly he began to believe something radical. He wasn't lazy. He never was. He was just afraid, and distracted, and overloaded by invisible expectations. Now he showed up daily. He gave himself grace when he failed, and he kept walking. Not because he was magically fixed, but because he chose to act, even when he didn't feel ready. Chris didn't become perfect. He became consistent, and that changed everything. If you saw even a little bit of yourself in Chris, know this: you're not broken. You're not lazy. You're just stuck in a loop your mind was taught to survive in. But you can rewire that loop. Start small. Start messy. Start now. Leave a comment and tell us, what's one thing you'll do today, even if you don't feel ready? Because the people who change aren't the ones who feel ready. They're the ones who move anyway.